Caught in a cosmic snare, an alien mother clings to hope as the walls of her shimmering prison close in. Alone, powerless, and desperate to reach the children she may never see again, she whispers a final plea to the stars, when a lone human pilot answers the call. Racing against crushing gravity, lethal drones, and a ticking air supply, he risks everything to tear open her celestial cage. In the next heartbeat, one daring rescue could rewrite both their destinies, and prove that humanity's greatest strength is the courage to save a stranger light years from home. The nebula's violet haze clung to the derelict research ark like a funeral shroud, its fractured hull drifting along an abandoned supply lane far outside regulated space. Inside the ark's labyrinth of flickering corridors, a hush more suffocating than vacuum pressed on every surface. Emergency strobes pulsed blood red, illuminating spilled luminescent fluid that flowed across deck plates in sluggish, glowing rivulets. In a corner cell meant for botanical samples, but long since cannibalized for makeshift habitation, SARL knelt beside the battered bulkhead door, her four slender arms wrapped protectively around the life support pod that shielded her unborn twins. Each whoosh of recycled air from the failing filters rasped like a dying animal. Sparks rained from a shorted conduit overhead, casting frantic light across her mottled jade skin and the pale bioluminescent swirls that mapped the stress fracturing her health. She counted the seconds between power dips and knew the microreactor would starve within hours. When it did, the gravity clamps would disengage and the entire cell block, already drifting loose, would shear away into the nebula, consigning her and the children inside her to the silence between stars. She had called for help in every frequency she could remember, the old diplomatic channel her mate once used when he still served the Core Alliance, the pirate bandwidths that traffickers preferred, even the passive emergency ping any first-year flight cadet learned to triangulate. Days had passed with no reply, and each breath tasted more of ozone and metal than oxygen. Hope had become another failing system, until the communication panel chimed, impossibly, with a single syllable in Standard Terran, copy. The voice was male, young but steadied by training. SARL forced herself to answer through a throat cracked by recycled air. Section B-17 Power Critical, Pregnant Detainee. Her translator glitched on the word detainee, the system defaulted to specimen, and she bristled at the humiliation. The voice returned, calm, clipped, not a hint of disbelief.
Understood.
Approaching your vector under silent burn.
Hold tight.
I'm coming to get you out. The channel clicked off, and for the first time since the traffickers abandoned ship after losing pressurization, SARL felt a tremor of disbelief rippling inside her. A human alone? No salvage crew, no bounty hunter bargaining for ransom, just a promise flung across light years that help was on the way. Lieutenant Jonas Mercer throttled down his worn-out courier to mere meters per second, letting the nebula's charged particles lick harmlessly off the ceramic mesh hull. His NAV computer painted the broken arc in ghostly overlays, breaches venting atmosphere, ice blossoms where coolant met hard vacuum, a wobbly spin that threatened to tear the vessel apart. The distress call's origin sat amidships beneath a forest of damaged antennae, cell block B-17, interior. The Alliance had scrubbed these arcs from official registries years ago, but smugglers loved them, cargo holds big enough to hide contraband, detention wings perfect for trafficking sentience. Jonas felt his jaw clench. He'd seen the aftermath on border patrol runs. Marks carved into chitin or flesh, supply lockers stuffed with expired nutrient packs, scribbled prayers on bulkheads. Human or alien, slavery stank the same. He breathed out hard, flipped the shuttle's belly lamps to maximum, and drifted toward a docking collar that still looked mostly intact. His father would sneer at the risk. Captain Robert Mercer had hauled freight legally for 3 decades and taught his son to weigh danger in percentages. 85% chance of ambush equals 90% chance you walk away. But Jonas heard his mother's voice louder, if someone's drowning, you don't waste time on math. She'd been a medic on the frontier, stitching miners back together for half rations, never once asking if they carried insurance. Jonas punched in docking clamps, felt the hull thud, and grabbed his medpack and plasma cutter. Inside, gravity barely functioned. He floated down a honeycomb corridor lined with empty cages, the kind used for livestock, not people, each door left gaping like broken teeth. His helmet lamps found dried splashes of what might have been blood or nutrient slurry. He aimed them away, pushing deeper until he hit a bulkhead warped from explosive decompression. The alien mother's voice guided him via comlink, left at a cracked viewport where the nebula blushed pink, then through an airlock jammed half open. She spoke with eerie calm, as though pacing her breath to spare dwindling oxygen. Jonas admired that. He burned through a mangled hatch, shoved it aside, and entered cell block B-17. SARL rose the instant the human drifted into view. He was smaller than her, wrapped in a matte EVA suit scuffed by past rescues, a Terran flag patch stitched crooked on the shoulder. His gloved hand lifted, palm out, the universal don't panic. She replied by tilting her crest, Proof she understood. Behind her, the incubation pod blinked red across every diagnostic. Jonas's gaze stuck there. Sarl saw concern, not pity. Jonas sealed the hatch to retain what atmosphere remained, then knelt to inspect the pod. Powers down to 6%. He thumbed numbers on a wrist slate. Shearing structural members in 94 minutes when reactors trip offline. That pod needs steady current or, he cut himself off, unwilling to speak the risk. Sarl supplied it anyway. My children will not survive cryoshock.
Nor will I. Her voice contained steel.
We leave together. Jonas met her gaze and nodded once, no debate.
He tapped comms.
Ship's hull integrity won't hold pressure if we haul the entire pod through the corridor. Too many breaches. Fastest route is external. He swiveled to the viewport's ragged edges where stars leaked through. We exit here, cross 15 meters to my courier. I'll tether the pod, then seal you both inside medbay. He eyed the mother's slender form, internal cavities not built for extended vacuum, metabolism already stressed. Can you manage a suit? She indicated a locker clamped to the wall, contents untouched by raiders. Jonas popped it open to reveal a tri-arm exosuit sized for her species. The oxygen cells were low, but his spare cartridges would fit with minor force. While he modded adapters, Sarl pressed a palm against the pod's viewport where faint biolights pulsed from the twins. She hummed, a resonance Jonas felt rather than heard, a lullaby pitched in subharmonics, steadying not just them but herself. Minutes later they sealed helmets. Jonas shot resin anchors into the deck beside the viewport, clipped 3 tungsten cables, 1 around his waist, 2 to the pod's gurney frame. On my mark, we blow the pane and ride ejecta, he said. You focus on staying conscious. Rapid depressurization will hit your lungs hard. She responded by flexing her secondary arms around the pod's grip rails, muscles rippling beneath bruised dermis. Jonas pulled the cutter, carved a jagged square, and kicked. The nebula rushed toward them in a blossom of indigo and gold. Vacuum's fist slammed their suits, alarms barked but held. The pod shot free, tether singing taut, and momentum yanked them across open space. Jonas triggered microthrusters in his boots, angling vector toward the courier's loading ramp. They slammed into the magpad, shock sparking blue. He overrode the hatch, dragged the pod inside, then crumpled to one knee while pressure equalized. Sarl stumbled but stayed upright, her breaths shallow and fast. He slapped the pod's power jack into the medbay wall socket. Diagnostics flicked from crimson to amber, then settled on green. Sarl sagged, foreheads touching the viewport, relief washing through her limbs. Sirens shrieked from the cockpit, the Orcs reactor cascade beginning.
Jonas slapped intercom.
Hold on to something. The courier's engines roared to life, jerking them forward. Through aft cams they watched the arc blossom in a silent, petal-bright explosion, sections spinning like autumn leaves before the nebula swallowed them whole. Sarl whispered a morning phrase in her language, honoring the souls lost within twisted steel, then turned to Jonas. You risked death for strangers.
Why?
He unlatched his helmet, sweat beading his hairline. Because nobody else answered. He eyed her, almost apologetic. And because I could. She considered this simple explanation, the pure arithmetic of conscience, and something unknotted in her chest. For cycles she had cursed humans, remembering only the slavers who wore their faces. Yet here stood one whose only motive seemed a stubborn refusal to walk away. As the courier cut through nebular dust toward Alliance territory, Sarl settled onto a gurney beside the incubation pod. Jonas checked vitals, prenatal heartbeat strong, maternal oxygen stabilizing. But new challenges loomed, Alliance quarantine law, trafficking investigations, xenophobic hardliners who'd call her brood contraband. Jonas keyed an encrypted channel to an old academy friend now serving in Fleet Jag. Got a priority evac, 1 Miradani mother, gestational twins, victims of smuggling. Need immediate humanitarian clearance. His friend's voice came back guarded but loyal. Send your logs, Jonas. I'll fight the red tape. He shared the sensor data, the Ark's ID scratched off, the slave collars found in cargo bins, fragments of illicit research proving the traffickers' brutality. As the file uplinked, Sarl approached, fingertips brushing the comm pad in silent gratitude. Jonas breathed easier, one bureaucratic battle begun, many ahead. Hours stretched into days while the courier traversed backchannels to avoid pirate raiders sniffing for salvage. Sarl spent the voyage learning Terran medical terms, adjusting nutrient intake so the twins would assimilate human-grade proteins, and asking questions that bled curiosity into trust. Jonas told stories of Earth, oceans that tasted of salt and sunlight, mountain air crisp enough to sting lungs, rainstorms where water fell free from the sky instead of condensing from recycling units. She closed her eyes, imagining her children running through open fields no cage could contain. One rotation out from Alliance space, proximity klaxons hammered. Jonas snapped to the cockpit. A frigate shadowed them, transponder masked, weapons hot. Pirate crest painted across the bow confirmed his fear, slaver reinforcements tracking lost merchandise.
They hailed.
Surrender the Miradani female and pod. Monetary reward for your cooperation. Jonas killed audio, turned to SARL who stood clutching a handhold, jaw set. He spoke quietly. You ready to see what a one-man courier can really do? She bared inner fangs in what humans would call a grin.
Show me.
He throttled engines into a spin, venting coolant in a glittering spiral to blind enemy sensors. The frigate unleashed magnetized harpoons, two thunked into hull plating. Jonas rerouted power, pulsed reverse thrusters, and slingshot around a dense knot of nebular ice crystals. Harpoons sheared off, the frigate overshot. SARL scrambled to the turret, her forearms slipping naturally into dual grip controls despite unfamiliar ergonomics. Jonas shouted fire vectors. She answered with surgical bursts, shredding the frigate's dorsal radiators. Superheated steam vented, and the pirate captain screamed threats over unencrypted comms until his ship spiraled crippled into the nebula.
Jonas exhaled.
Not bad for someone who's never handled Terran ordnance. SARL flexed aching fingers. You saved my children. I will fight for yours. When they finally breached Alliance border beacons, a patrol carrier escorted them to a med station where doctors whisked SARL and the pod into a sterile wing. Jonas paced outside decontamination, suddenly feeling every hour of lost sleep. A diplomat in slate-gray uniform approached, flanked by security. Lieutenant Mercer, understand you violated quarantine protocol entering restricted space. Jonas straightened, ready to argue, but the diplomat's tone softened. Protocols can bend for lives saved. Your sensor logs corroborate trafficking charges. The council thanks you. He nodded toward the medwing. Mother and offspring will receive refugee status pending tribunal. Jonas's shoulders dropped. Victory, partial, fragile, but real. 3 days later, inside a sun-washed recovery ward, SARL rested with monitors humming gentle lullabies. The twins floated in a nutrient basin, tiny limbs kicking, translucent gills fluttering as they practiced future breaths. Jonas stepped inside uncertain, but she beckoned. They will know your name, she said, voice still hoarse yet warm. They will learn that freedom can come on wings of courage, human wings. Jonas brushed a knuckle along the basin's rim, marveling at the pulse of new life. And they'll know their mother fought beside me, he answered. Outside the viewport, transport lanes glittered, each vessel a testimony that civilizations could intertwine without chains. SARL followed his gaze. There are others still in bonds, she whispered. Together, we can break them. Jonas let the words settle. His courier needed hull plates replaced, fines to settle, fuel debts to clear, but purpose had never felt clearer.
He met her eyes.
Then we start planning the next rescue. He didn't know where funds would come from, or allies, or how many battles they'd lose before winning one more soul's freedom. But standing beside a mother whose hope refused to die, and 2 infants whose futures were freshly unwritten, Jonas Mercer believed in improbable math, that the courage of 1 human and 1 alien could tilt the scales of an entire quadrant. Somewhere beyond those glimmering lanes, another distress call waited. When it sounded, they would answer, not as savior and saved, but as partners armed with the most relentless weapon in any galaxy, the certainty that every life, no matter how small or strange, was worth the risk. Jonas's courier emerged from its month-long refit with new armor plates that still smelled of ion-forged slag, a belly rail for SARL's customized turret, and hold stuffed with food packs donated by frontier miners who had heard the tale of the Nebula rescue. Word travels fast where hope is rare. By the time the ship lifted from the docking cradle, it bore a call sign whispered across back-channel comms, Star Mercy. The first coordinates came from SARL's old resistance contact, a shadow in the mesh who signed every burst transmission with a single glyph meaning dawn. A slaver convoy was moving 40 Miradani and half a dozen humans toward a remote breaker yard where bodies fetched more than living labor. Jonas plotted an intercept while SARL settled her infants in the shock-proof cradle bolted to the medbay bulkhead. The twins, now strong enough to breathe ambient air for short stretches, gurgled at the vibration of the drives. She kissed each brow ridge, slipped on her exosuit, and joined Jonas on the bridge. The convoy ran with escorts, 2 gutted corvettes bristling with second-hand guns and a command hauler whose transponder spoofed an agricultural freighter. Jonas throttled down, letting plasma wake dissipate. He wanted them ignorant until the last heartbeat. SARL slid into the weapons cradle, for hands dancing across fire control pedals she herself had rewired. They approached dead silent, reactor masked behind a drifting ice field. At 2 clicks he burst pinged Alliance Authority codes, bogus but convincing, and broadcast a demand for inspection. The escorts wheeled to engage. SARL loosed a strobing wall of bright pulses that chewed through their sensor masts before they could lock missiles. The corvettes split, one spun out trailing coolant, the other tried to ram. Jonas feathered lateral jets and skimmed past so close he could see wide alien eyes behind its cracked canopy. A precise second salvo from SARL cored the main reactor, leaving the hull a dark hulk drifting into starlight. The hauler, shields raised too late, fired grapplers. Jonas dumped decoys, then angle drilled beneath its belly, cutting docking clamps with the ship's ventral beam. As cargo pods tumbled free, SARL diverted guns to the command deck, blowing viewports wide so the slaver captain's screams vanished into vacuum. Marines from an Alliance cutter, summoned by Jonas's prearranged burst, translated in and secured prisoners while Jonas tractored escape pods. 46 lives breathed clean air before the hour ended. Victories, however, carry bills. A bounty consortium posted a price on Star Mercy high enough to tempt privateer fleets. Supplies ran thin as ports closed doors under cartel pressure. Jonas and SARL slept in turns, plotting jump chains through uncharted folds to shake pursuit. During one bleak drift in a lightless rift, fuel cells at 3%, SARL asked the question neither had voiced: what if we fall before the work is finished? Jonas stared at NAV readouts that offered no comfort and answered with the truth. Then someone else will hear the story and take our place. He glanced toward the cradle where the twins slept, tiny chests rising in perfect unison.
Maybe them.
Their answer arrived sooner than hope dared predict. A coalition of border worlds, miners, medics, traders, even ex-pirates sick of the trade, rallied behind the symbol they had become. They offered caches, safe harbors, anonymous beacons hidden in asteroid belts. A Miradani frigate, once part of the Royal Guard before the fall, limped into their secret dock and swore itself to SARL's command. Crews mixed, human engineers next to four-armed gunners, amphibious doctors treating radiation burns alongside Terran nurses. In place of any single banner, they painted a simple emblem, an open hand releasing a broken shackle. Months blurred into raids, jailbreaks, courtroom battles fought with leaked data instead of plasma. Jonas faced tribunals, testifying until his voice cracked. SARL stood beside diplomats, translating stories of cell blocks and stolen infants that made senators weep on public streams. Each victory tightened the net around the consortium until, on a dawn orbit over the neutral capital of Kalar Prime, the final executive charter was revoked and Galactic law branded sentient trafficking an act of piracy punishable by immediate seizure. Celebrations flared planet-wide, but Jonas found himself in the station nursery, rocking the twins while SARL addressed a crowd of thousands. Her speech carried on every broadband, a single human answered a call no one else would. Let that be our map. When any voice cries in the dark, we will answer. Outside the viewport, freighters hooted engine flares in salute. Years later, children across 2 sectors learned the tale of the alien mother in the nebula and the human who refused to calculate the odds. Some called it legend, others, history. On a quiet hill above an academy where Miradani and Terran cadets trained side by side, a bronze sculpture caught the morning sun, an outstretched human hand clasped gently by a 4-fingered alien palm, both lifting a newborn toward the sky. The plaque read simply, "Every life is worth the risk." Jonas Mercer, now gray at the temples, stood beside SARL as their twins accepted their flight wings. He whispered, not for the first time, "I'd do it all again." SARL's crest brushed his shoulder in fond exasperation. "You say that as though we're finished." She gestured to the graduates, to the distant stars beyond.
Listen.
Somewhere out there, another beacon waits. Jonas's answering smile was the same reckless curve that had echoed through her dying radio the day everything changed. Together they turned toward the open sky, ready, always, to answer the next call.